So guys, we're back working on the Daimler again this week, and as you can see, the engine is still on the floor in front of me. Now, there was a bit of an incident with the engine. I got a little bit of tunnel vision and ended up doing something rather silly and unnecessary. We'll get to that later on in the video, but to begin with, we're going to be working on this here rear end. So I found out what went wrong, what I did, what I didn't do in the last video when we were trying to swap the flanges over. So we're going to get that sorted. I'll show you how all that works and what we have to do there to get the new input flange on. And then once that's sealed up and out the way, going to get cutting on this boot floor. So we've got a nice bit of steel over here, and I've got a few fresh grinding discs. So I'm going to cut all the boot floor out, strengthen up the back end, and then we can slide the subframe up in, and then we'll get to work on the front end and getting that lump there back in. So as I'm sure you guys know, I'm always trying to grow and improve the channel and make videos better and somewhat more informative for some of you out there. And that does involve sometimes making a rather large and risky investment. And this week, I've been shopping. So I've been out and bought something that did push me well into my overdraft, but I hope it's going to help you guys to see what we're doing a bit better, help us organise projects a bit more, and help me explain what goes on inside of my rather strange brain. So what I've done is I've bought myself a whiteboard made from only the highest quality British components. This whiteboard not only came with pens, but also magnets. So let's dive into this diff and see if we can put our newfound purchase to a bit of use. So we've got our Daimler rear end here. Now if you don't know why we're doing all of this, go back and watch the previous video. I explain all of it in great detail. But essentially what we have to do today is fit this input flange onto this diff, which originally had this input flange. Now when you watch the previous video, you'll see that I put this input flange on there, bolted it all up tight, went that's mint, and then realised that the diff was completely seized up. I then proceeded to mention that we needed to shim the bearings in the pinion to allow us to fit this new flange. Now, I wasn't quite correct in what I said there. The theory was still there, but these Jag diffs, or Dana diffs, do it in a slightly different way. So thank you to all those that commented on the video and told me how they work. I went away and did a bit of research. I've ordered some parts, and let me now explain to you what's going on in here and what we need to do moving forward. Right, so we're up here by the whiteboard, and let me try and explain to you what's going on with this diff. So we've got a pinion here. Now the pinion goes through into the diff and engages with the ring gear. Let me draw that out. Yeah. One thing I think we might learn from this is that my art skills are marginal. Now, this is the big ring gear, and then we've got two sort of bevel gears that engage in each other, and your axles attach in there. That goes out to your wheels. So the input from the gearbox comes into here, spins this, which then turns this big ring gear here. Now this pinion here is held in place by two tapered roller bearings. Now this here is one of the tapered roller bearings. We can't get the other one out. I'll show you why in a sec, but that is one of them. And they sit in there. I don't know if you can see at the other end, but there's another one that faces the other way. So this one goes in that way, whoosh, like that, and the other one is back there, comes, and that gets pushed through from the other side when the pinion gets put in, and you can see it sits in that race there. So let's draw that. Right, well if we're being perfectly honest, my drawing skills are horrendous, but let me try and talk you through what we've got going on with this abomination. So this bit here, this is the casing. So that is this bit of the diff. Then we've obviously got the ring gear and the pinion, which I explained a minute ago. And these are the two tapered bearings pointing towards each other. So again, this bit here, so this bit, the green bit is one of those, and that one there, whoosh. Okay, we then have the flange, that bit, the nut and a washer over there. And then we've got a seal, which we've got to put in. You can see one on there. That stops the oil from coming out of here because this is all sitting in oil, and then we've obviously got the shaft going through here. So when you do this nut up, what it does is pulls the pinion this way, and then there's a little shim in here which you've set to set the length or the engagement of the pinion into the ring gear. You adjust the size of this shim, and that moves the pinion in and out basically. So when you pull the gear up, it pulls on that shim, which then pushes this tapered roller bearing and this tapered roller bearing into their races. So these black bits up here are their races, which we saw in here. So they're like a tapered bit of really finely ground steel that the bearing rides on. And what you want to do is tighten these up till there's little to no movement, but you don't want too much pressure. If you have too much pressure, it locks up, which is what happens to ours. And if you have them too loose, obviously this pinion can then flop about all over the place, and that will wear the bearings out as well, because they don't run in one spot consistently all the time. You don't want them shaking all over the place. Now, there's a few ways to set that distance. The modern way to do it is to input some shims in between these two. So as you do it up, it squishes on the shims, and then you can do this nut up as tight as you like, because all it's doing is just pressing on those shims together. That allows the nut to stay tight. That's quite a good way of doing it. You do have to set the shims, unfortunately. You have to do sort of measuring and all that jazz to get that right. But what this diff uses is something called a crush sleeve. So this is the old one. Now this crush sleeve sits in between those two bearings like that. And as you do the big nut up on the end here, and it pulls this pinion and pushes inwards, it crushes that washer, or that sleeve, sorry, in between the two tapered roller bearings. And then, to get it to the right level of squish, you measure the amount of torque it takes to turn this input shaft, which then turns the wheels, obviously, and you basically measure the resistance on the bearings, and when it's at the right level, you stop tightening it. So what I did in the previous video is when I put that flange on, I put it on, did the nut all the way right up, and it crushed the hell out of that sleeve too much, locked the bearings against their respective housings. So we've got ourselves here a new crush sleeve, which I say is going to go into here. So what I've done now is obviously pulled that bearing out so we can see up to this here, we can see up to here. So I'm going to slide it down the shaft like that. I'll clean this bearing up, put that onto the shaft, put our input flange, oh no, hang on, put our oil seal in, input flange on, nut and washer, do that all up to the correct spec, and hopefully it will be happy motoring. But this is an old-fashioned way of doing it, quite an interesting way of doing it. It obviously works. The only problem I can see with it is you don't get proper preload on that nut, but it obviously seemed to work for a very long time. Crush sleeve. Housekeeping. Delicate bearing maintenance. Bearing install. Oh, oh, oh. Oh. Oh god. Oh no. Very delicately installed. Clean up the seal face, making sure to get as much abrasive material and rust into the bearings as possible. Fresh oil seal, whoosh, in there. Oh yeah. Give that some persuasion. Right, oil seal's back in place. Let's lube up this seal and then see if we can slip on the flange. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Mint. Flange is on. I've cleaned up the thread and put a bit of Loctite on there because we're going to be reusing this nut. Let's wind that on and do the old girl up. So the old school way of doing this is with like a spring balance. You can also use a torque wrench when you tighten this up to measure the rolling resistance. I haven't done it that way. I've done it the more modern way because I've got this sort of fully automated tool that all you do is put it on, hold the trigger, and it does it up to the correct torque value. All right then, let's get into this crusty back end. I get a mask. Right, I've changed weapons. And that thing is the tit. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Right, that's the worst of it cut out. Now just need to tidy up the edge and see if we can find somewhere to weld to. Then cut a nice new bit. So this may look extreme, but it's the best way I've found to remove the many layers of bitumen and underseal that have been applied to this car over the years. Fits lovely, that.
Yeah. Something like that?
Yeah,
cool.
Mint.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So we got Matt here doing a lovely job cleaning up the boot, ready for our new floor. That's looking absolutely delightful. I'm just over here starting a bit of welding work on the sill here. So we've got a load of it cut out and a nice new plate welded in. I'm pretty convinced this part of the sill is going to end up being Bluetooth, unfortunately, because that's literally just filler left there. So we'll fix that later on. But yeah, there we go. So while me and Matt are here doing a bit of cutting, a bit of grinding, a bit of welding, a bit more cutting, and some more welding, I'm going to take you guys back a couple of days to take a little look at our Cummins engine. Now, I don't know if any of you saw the video where we did a science experiment up by the lake, but we used this engine as a test mule. And after I brought it back in the workshop, we noticed a couple problems. So let me take you through this descent into madness that I went through. We had it running for about half an hour, and at the end of the video, after it all stopped filming, we pulled the dipstick out and noticed that the oil on it was extremely clean, which to me is rather concerning, because if you look at that, how clean that oil is, that's almost like it's never gone round an engine. To investigate further, was took the oil filter off. Now I noticed that the oil filter isn't very full, so it has got some oil in it, but it's not full to the brim. I wouldn't say that was normal, but perhaps where we moved it, it threw some oil about. What I'm going to do is just try and turn it over now. I've got this jump pack here and a battery. We'll put this oil filter over here so it doesn't go anywhere. And what I want to see is basically if any oil will come out the oil filter housing, because what I'm concerned about is that no oil's actually been going around the engine. So if we have that on there like that, we get our handy dandy start button here. Put that on there and see that? That sounds rather concerning to me. Alright, so I've just got a paint pot here to start with. Let's pour this oil out. Yeah, see that? That is quite dark compared to what's come out of that sump, I'd say. So I'm just trying to bar it over here. This is a pretty nasty way to do it, I know, but that does not feel very good at all. That feels extremely tight to me. Jesus Christ. Oh, for heaven's sake. So the next thing to check is the turbo, because I would assume the turbo would be something that would be quite quickly go wrong with no oil. So with these journal bearing turbos, you can have
as much, well, not as much play as you want, but you can have a lot more play that way than you can with like a ball bearing turbo. So that feels fine. It shouldn't be able to touch the housing, but you can have a little bit of play because when the oil pressure builds up, it floats on a film of oil, so that will just sort of center itself, and you won't have that play when it's actually running, but it's actual play, so inwards and outwards like that you don't want, and this feels absolutely fine. So there is a bit of octopus in there, I will admit, but beyond that, it's all looking rather healthy. All right, we've now got the hairdressing car running a set of jump leads, and then we put the jump pack straight on the starter. So we should have many voltages now. Get that a bit. Woo! Oh, come on. Come on. Oh, good grief. I mean, even just the drip would be nice. Right guys, well that was it, turning over the fully charged battery and a fully charged jump pack. So I've just put these bolts in the end here. I've got a, you know, not the best lever bar, but definitely a lever bar. That is really, really tight. Oh dear Christ. That's bad news. That is very bad news. I think we've killed this engine. So back for a new day today. Did have to take a little bit of time away yesterday afternoon because after finding out that this engine has actually seized up after we've just spent many hours reassembling and painting it, was quite frustrating. And I'm not really one for frustration or emotions. In fact, I was in fact once referred to as a emotional brick wall, which is another story. But anyway, we're going to move forwards. We will take this engine apart and we'll have a look at what's gone wrong, because what's very confusing to me is that when we were running it, it was running perfectly fine, no knocking, no funny noises. We come here, we brought it in on a pallet, and it appears to have seized up overnight. I'm sure by the looks of it, it was just running without oil pressure, but I don't get why there was no knocking or nasty sounds before it seized up. You know, normally engines will seize up hot and then they'll cool off and they'll go again for a little bit and then they'll seize up again. But this is very strange that it's sort of just locked up, sat here. So we'll dig into why this happened. We'll try and figure that out if we can. And you know, I'm gonna look for another block that we can build up to go in the car. With our timescale now, it's not gonna be painted and looking lovely like this. It's just gonna be put in and got going. So I thought we'd best have a look inside this engine. So we'll just we'll drain the oil out, whip the sump off, take one of the main caps off and one of the rod caps if we need to, and we'll just check. We'll just make sure that it is well and truly a foobard. It's not brand new. Right, I'm going to take the sump off now. We'll have a look inside. So I got the sump off here. Not loads of bearing stuff floating around in there. But if the oil's not flowing, it's not going to be. So no lumps of rag, which is good because that would have been a really silly mistake. Let's have a look. So this is the seal I was worried that we might have disturbed or broken. Not that one. That all still looks intact. It's certainly not disturbed enough that it would cause no oil pressure anyway. So what I'm going to do now is undo, let's start with a rod cap because that's just easier. Let's undo this rear rod cap because I assume, I don't actually know the oil circuit on this engine, but I would assume that that is the last one to get oil. So let's undo that and then we'll see how that looks. Huh. Huh. What is going on? That doesn't look that bad to me, really. Right, now I'm confused. So that's the main cap. Again, I mean, there's clearly been a bit of something go around there, look. What in the world? That's not, I mean, that's, you know, I'd put that back in easily. Definitely doesn't look like it's a main or rod bearing failure. What else could cause it to lock up, do we reckon? Let's just try it with a bar again now. See if we can turn it over. The only other thing we touched was the clutch and flywheel. So maybe we should take that off and have a look. So that starter is still engaged, which is quite interesting. So unless something's going on there, it's causing it to bind up. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? If I've just done all of this. Turns out it's just a freaking starter motor. Who knows? Who knows? It really is freaking tight. I don't get it. I don't understand. Right, I'm gonna just have a look at that starter motor. The fact that that is jammed up in there. I'm going to take that out because that doesn't look right to me. That looks like something's afoot. So let's unbolt that. Maybe it's slipped or something. We had this spacer on it before because with our old flywheel, the teeth engagement was such that the starter, for the starter pinion to engage properly, you had to space the starter back from the bell housing. But when we put it on with the new flywheel, it seemed that if we had that spacer on, the pinion it would just touch the edge of the ring gear. So when we were out in the field, we just used this as a spacer because the bolts were too long, and that's what this stack of washers is about. But perhaps it's slipped or moved or something's gone on there. Let's have a look. Let's take it all off. Let's see. So interestingly, this does feel quite stuck. Come on. Okay. Now she's loose. Now that pinion's gone back as well, which is nice. Let's see now. With the bar. If it'll move. You're joking. Good news! Okay, I'm not going to do too much because that freaking rod and main cap's off. Oh, bloody hell. Well, there we are. Okay, so I've checked the pinion on the starter, and it is in fact a 9-pinion starter, which is good. That means there's 9 teeth on that little gear there, which should be the correct one for this flywheel, because that is the one I ordered. So fingers crossed. I've tightened it back up with some proper bolts. We'll swap the cables over, put some oil back in the engine, and see if it works again. If not, maybe there's something up with our starter. But let's try this, see how we get on. Right then, I've got some oil in it. I've got it rigged up, ready to start. I haven't got the stop solenoid connected yet, so it won't get any diesel, so hopefully it won't start. What we'll do is just crank it over, see if it builds a little bit of oil pressure. If it does, we'll give it some fuel, and we'll go. Hopefully, this starter's going to work. Right, I've got our oil pressure gauge here. We're hoping for that top needle to move a bit. Let's try it. Turn the jump pack on, perhaps. really don't reckon this starter motor is very happy. Stuck in again. Okay, so what I've done here is just put some washers on here, and don't panic, this is just a temporary thing, because perhaps we need a little bit of spacing, but not too much. Maybe that big space we had was just a bit too thick. So let's try this. Oh yeah. We're getting oil pressure there. So right, let's give it some fuel and we'll try again. Okay. Good news! Bit of octopus there. Right, it switched itself off there because that plug came off. But that is good news. So I just need to either make up a spacer or maybe I'll just put some washers in there and that will fix that forever and ever. What a right carry on. Right, well I'm a total idiot. As Gandhi once said, if your Cummins is seized up, check it's not the starter motor first before you tear it all apart and spend hours trying to diagnose it. But that's in the past now, so I think lesson learned. It's usually the simplest of problems is the solution, as that famous saying goes. Right, now I'm done making a total tit of myself. Let's get back and see how we got on with this welding. Right then, we've got pretty close to the boot floor. We've got our nice new bit of sheet metal in here, and we've started doing a really lovely bit of welding there. Very disappointing thing with doing stuff like this is it never really looks that great. But what I'm going to do is I've got a couple more seams to do, just this one back here, which I'm going to weld from the inside, and I'm just going to finish up that one. I'm going to go ahead and finish that up off camera because it's all very boring and much of the same stuff. And next week we'll have a big update episode. Peter's going to be down, so hopefully that engine's going to go back in, but we'll see how we get on. And yeah, thank you for watching, and see you again next time when all this welding is done.